Robert, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you, Representative Raymond? We
I'm good.
are, yes, sir.
Can you see me okay there?
Let me do a quick change of my, yes, I can see you there. Let's make sure that everybody else can see you.
I'm on the side of the road off of 35. I think I'm in the senator's district headed north, but I was gonna get to the Capitol and do it in my office, but 2 hour delay of traffic, even before I got to the border check station. So there was a bad accident there, an 18-wheeler. So I pulled over and I'm in front of a Bill Miller barbecue.
Safety first, Representative. I think that's what we can definitely bank on. We're just waiting for Representative King to join us.
So Representative Raymond, Gloria. So you're stopped there because you kind of really have to?
No, there was almost 6. I was trying to get to, oh shoot, very low fuel level. No, we're okay. I was trying to get to New Braunfels and I didn't quite make it. I was actually trying to get to Austin, as I said, but there was a bad, I'd never been delayed 2 hours coming out of Laredo, but I was. And so I'm in my pickup.
The checkpoint
So Tracy is going to start like at 6:10. Representative Tracy King, hi. And then he might need to leave. So I was just going to give you 15 minutes to get gas if you needed it.
Oh, yeah.
He's running out of gas.
Can I do that? Well, yeah, all of a sudden I realized it's like, because I stopped at that first stop outside of the other side of the border check station, and it wasn't pumping gas. So yeah, if you can do that, then I'll stay on, but let me see if I get to a gas station here, and then I'll jump on. Well, I'll just stay on like this. I'll stay on while I look for something.
I have here with us Representative Tracy King. First off, we'll go ahead and start. It is 6 exactly, and we are going to start right now.
Okay.
I'll just go ahead and thank everybody here for joining us. My name is Roberto. I'm the state director for Texas LULAC, and it is my pleasure to have you here in this forum with our esteemed counsel, National Legal Counsel Gloria Leal. She will be moderating this a wonderful event for us. And we have with us State Representatives Richard Pena Raymond and State Representative Tracy O. King. And with that, I'll go ahead and let Gloria take the floor. And she has the whole agenda, which was sent to everybody last night. And just so everybody understands the format of this webinar, there are question and answer opportunities here on the bottom row. For those of you who are joining us as attendees of the webinar, for us panelists, we have the ability to speak and to answer questions as they come. As Gloria takes over, I'm gonna remove myself and I'm gonna join the group, and I'm gonna see what's going on in the group chat. And as we have questions, I'll bring them to Gloria's attention, and hopefully we can commence that Q&A session after we've allowed the representatives time to speak, and after Gloria's been allowed to go through her agenda. Gloria, without further ado.
Yes. Good afternoon. It's not quite evening during December. My name is Gloria Leal. I'm an attorney in Austin, Texas, and I've known these two gentlemen for a long time, it seems. I am also
from the beginning.
What did you say?
From
also
the beginning,
30 years, LULAC General Counsel.
Yeah.
And I'm assisting our new state director, Robert Tellez, with legislative matters. So, you know, our Texas legislature, as everyone knows, meets every 2 years. So we met on January the 13th, concluded on May 13th, May 31st. And then the governor called the legislators, the House and the Senate back for a special session. And the House, I believe they convened and adjourned, I believe. And then there may be another special call session on another issue. But over 1,000 bills are filed every session, and it's very difficult to pass a bill, but it's become difficult to kill a bill, depending on which side you are. So although LULAC is a nonpartisan group, because more likely than not, some of the issues that benefit the Hispanic community are issues advocated by Democrats. We invite those members that filed legislation advocated on behalf of issues that affected the Hispanic community, as well as Texas at large. So joining us today is State Representative Chair Tracy King, who is from Uvalde. Mr. King, Representative King, is Chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, as well as serves on Licensing and Regulation and Youth Health and Safety Committee. He's from Uvalde, which is very close to Laredo, which is where State Representative Richard Pena is from. Richard Pena Raymond. Richard Pena Raymond, right. And Representative Raymond serves on the very, very powerful State Affairs Committee and the very, very powerful Ways and Means Committees. So these two speakers are very, very important, influential members of the Texas House of Representatives. We also have joining us, not as a panelist, but as a guest participant, the Honorable State Representative Lulu Flores, who is a first-year state rep. She's from Austin, Texas, and she served on the Judicial and Civil Administration Committee, and as well as Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. Because Representative Chair King has a time commitment, we are going to let him go first, and then Richard Raymond, followed by Lulu at the end to make some brief remarks if she can. And Representative King, you're welcome to speak on any issue of your choice. I did provide a couple of notes to your staff. We really do want to hear and thank you for your efforts on behalf of school safety legislation to benefit or in response to Uvalde, as well as to the monumental water legislation that you passed this session. So thank you, Representative King.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you, and I've had a long working history with LULAC, and I'm very, very appreciative of the work that LULAC has done over the years. And I'm glad that my colleagues are with us today, Representative Flores and Representative Raymond. And we're going to hope that Representative Raymond finds that gas station and he's able to stay with us. So let me kick it right off with, of course, here in Uvalde, we had that school shooting on May the 24th of last year, which, as you can imagine, devastates a community, and as it certainly devastated this community. And after many meetings and with the families that were involved, the main issue that they came up with that they wanted to do was to raise the age to purchase an AR-15 type weapon from 18 to 21. The young man that was the shooter turned 18, bought the first of two ARs the next day, and then about 7 or 8 days after he turned 18, well, then he showed up at Robb Elementary School, which my children used to attend when they were in school. They went to school 2nd through 4th grade there. And so 1st through 4th grade. Yeah, 1st through 4th grade there back in the day. And then he commenced, as we all know, he shot 38 people, killing 19 students and 2 teachers. And so the community asked me to raise the age from 18 to 21, and they understood that that wasn't a cure-all, and it wasn't going to stop all school shootings, but it would have made a difference in this case. And so that was because this young man had tried to buy weapons. He had tried to persuade several of his family members to purchase weapons for him in the past, and they had refused him. And so we carried that bill. Everybody was fully cognizant of the difficulty in passing that type of legislation in the state of Texas. It's a very pro-Second Amendment state. And we filed it. We got a hearing, and then it sat in committee a while. And then on the last day that they could get it out, we got it voted out of committee, which we think is historic to get it voted out of committee here in the state of Texas. And ultimately, we were not able to get it on the calendar for the full vote on the floor. And I believe it had a chance on the floor. I really do, after conversations with a lot of our colleagues on the floor. And so that's something that, of course, will be worked on again in the future. But as a result of that, there were a number of issues that came up about school safety that we were doing. And one of them that we worked on was our part of the world, Laredo and here, the 32 counties in this surrounding area are badly in need of more psychiatric beds for commitment for individuals that need commitment for psychiatric causes. So we were able to get the legislature to allocate about $35 million to build a new psychiatric hospital somewhere here, but it's probably in Uvalde, and with 16 youth beds and 16 adult beds in it. And so that's a big deal, and that's going to start here pretty soon. We also were able, as a number of things came out during this, the Attorney General's office has a victims compensation fund that kicked into part in this, but there were some issues there that were unanticipated. One of the things is some of these funeral expenses were more than what the victims compensation fund could cover. And there were travel expenses and various sundry things like that that were not covered under the current legislation, or at least not clear in the current legislation. So the Attorney General's office actually asked us to carry a bill that gave them more flexibility with that victims compensation fund, and we were able to successfully get that over the finish line, and that will help in that particular fund tremendously. And our bill, there was a duplicate bill in the Senate. We ended up using the duplicate bill, but it was all the stuff that we had worked on. And then the big school security bill passed, which was HB 3, which was pretty controversial, to be honest with you. But it had, as a lot of the big legislation does, a lot of things that probably most of us could agree with, and a few things that some of us wouldn't agree with. But the most controversial thing is it requires an armed person at every school campus, and that can be a peace officer, a school resource officer, a school marshal, or a school district employee. The only times it would be an employee would be when they didn't have any access to those other officers that were already commissioned as peace officers. And if it was an employee, it would have to be somebody who had received extensive training. That was the controversial part of it, or one of it. It also requires the school safety center to review best practices at all the campuses, regional safety teams to conduct intruder detection audits, requires TEA to develop standards for notifying parents of violent activity on campuses. That was one of the things that came out in the Uvalde shooting, was even though they had the most recent technology, there's still hiccups that happen when they're trying to notify people. People are not clear exactly what the chain of command is and who's going to make the notifications. And it's not negligence on anybody's part. It's just that, you don't prepare for this type of catastrophe on a normal basis. Small counties, less than 350,000, requires a sheriff to host semi-annual meetings to discuss school safety. Requires many of the district employees to complete evidence-based mental health first aid training. Requires each district to give DPS and other law enforcement a walkthrough and map of each campus. That was one of the things that turned out in this deal, is you go in there and the officers didn't exactly know what the layout of the school was. They didn't know that there was connecting classrooms and those types of things. And that made it much more difficult when it came time to get in there. And it provides a little bit of additional money, or quite a bit of additional money, for school safety upgrades. So that was Senate Bill HB 3, House Bill 3. And there was Senate Bill 838, which requires school district to provide classrooms with silent panic alert buttons. And another bill that required active shooter training, more additional. So that was what we did on school safety. And then you mentioned the water bill that we carried. I'm chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, which is where most of the water related legislation goes through. And we passed Senate Bill 28, which was a companion bill to my House Bill 5. And it creates a Texas Water Fund and the New Water Supply Fund to aid in the funding of water infrastructure and new water supply development projects. $1 billion was allocated to that. but it has to receive voter approval in November on the constitutional ballot. So I would encourage everybody.
But what does it do? But what exactly does that mean? I mean, what does it mean to Uvalde or to the people of Texas? Infrastructure, more dams, more reservoirs?
Well, let's just take any small community, but let's take Laredo, for example. It's not a small community, but small, medium-sized city. Most of these communities have infrastructure that transports the water to the facility, to the homes, and transports the waste away from the homes. The average age of those pipes in the ground in the state of Texas is about 60 years. And so a lot of that infrastructure is aged out. And there's just no way that particularly the small communities, can afford to replace that thing. And the voters won't approve a bond issue. And so it puts them in a real conundrum there. And so they end up losing a lot of water to breaks in the lines and those types of things. And so the hope is that this will create, and the need in the state of Texas, based on our survey, is far more than $1 billion, to be candidly with you. But that was all that we could get the agreement for. And so it's going to create another fund. It's going to simplify the application process, create a little bit of a forgivable loan and a grant program for some of these small communities that can't pay the matching for the loans that are already in effect. So that's the goal, is to help people, help communities.
And you state that it's going to be on the ballot on November?
Well, yeah, because they have to create these specific funds. And so the voters have to agree to the creation of these funds within the Texas Water Development Board.
Thank you.
And so that was that was the big water bill that we had. And there were some other water bills too, but that was the main one that we worked on all session long. And the governor signed that bill the other day. I wasn't able to be at the signing ceremony, but he did have a ceremony where he signed it. And so that was our big water bill that we worked on. And then I'm on the licensing committee, and there's always a bunch of interesting bills that go through there. But one of the big ones was it permits a licensing authority to issue a digital occupational licensing. So if you have an occupational license, it allows them to issue that to you digitally, where you can have it on your phone rather than having to carry a card with you and those type of things. So that's some of the bills that we worked on, the school safety bills, the bill to raise the age for purchasing semi-automatic firearms with a detachable magazine. There's an exemption, by the way, in that House Bill 2744 to raise the age bill for people who were military with honorable discharges, or people that were involved in law enforcement, or people that were, a family member that was just going to use it. Give it to one of your children to go out on the ranch and hunt with a little bit or something like that. So there was some exemption there. Did
I read somewhere that they eliminated the requirement to get your car inspected, the annual car inspections? Did that come before you?
That did come through. That went through the Texas, the Transportation Committee. And I was just talking about that the other day, and I'm pretty sure that bill made it all the way through the process.
Well, thank you.
You still have to pay the $6 fee,
okay.
but you just don't have to get the sticker and the inspection. I think if it's a very old vehicle, it may still be in place.
Well, thank you very much. Do y'all have any comments, representatives?
Ma'am? Representative Raymond, excuse me.
Gloria, you want me to jump in a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Let me just say, well, first of all, congratulations to Robert Tellez on his new position, and I very much appreciate his commitment and his drive and his interest, in leading LULAC in the state of Texas, and proud that he's from Laredo, and I know his family well and know him well, and so I appreciate your willingness to take this position. And Gloria, thank you for being on here. As you mentioned, I mean, I met you when I first got elected in 1992, and I think Chairman King got elected 2 years later, and probably met you then. So we've known each other a long time. You look a lot better than we do. So time has been kinder. Time has been kinder to you than it has been to Chairman King or myself. But what I would like to say is, and Lulu's on there as well, Representative Flores. You didn't mention she grew up in Laredo, and so she may be
Oh.
a state representative for Austin, but she brings with her the wisdom of being a Laredoan at heart and growing up in Laredo. What I want to do before Chairman King has to leave, I could talk about some of the things we worked on as well, but maybe to give people who are on listening or participating and want to ask some questions, maybe we should start with that, so that if they ask something that Tracy's better at answering, well, he could answer it, and if I'm better at it, I could. If Lulu's better at it, she could. But do we want to try that? Do we have hands in the chat room or whatever, raised hands or questions being typed out? Robert or Gloria?
I'm watching the chat right now, and there's no particular questions right now that I can see.
Okay.
But I know that there was a question. If somebody could ask those questions, and I'll open it up to the floor again if anybody has any questions. So I see Ana Coco has her hand up. Let's see what Ana Coco has to say.
Okay.
We can bring them into the. I'm gonna go ahead and bring her in.
Ana?
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Buenas tardes a todos.
Buenas
Good
tardes.
afternoon.
Thank you all for being here this afternoon. It means a lot to all of us. And thank you, Robert, for putting this together. La pregunta para los representantes, the question, I am a teacher, I'm an educator. I just came from my classroom and I work with teachers. So any hope for teachers getting a raise, por favor? We are losing teachers daily. I myself work with teachers and instructional coaches, and our teachers, they have not received any raises with the rate of inflation. So please, anyone from here, if you would like to please let us know if there's any hope for us teachers. Gracias.
Well, does any
Well, I'll
member
jump
want to
in and then-
respond to that?
Yeah, I'll
Representative
jump
Raymond?
in and then I'll jump in, and then the others can as well if they'd like. First of all, we did in 2019 push. I know Lulu wasn't there yet, but we pushed through a teacher pay raise, which was important in 2019. This session, we didn't get a teacher pay raise, not for lack of trying. It's one of those things where there are differences in our parties, and as Democrats, of course, we push very hard for teacher pay raises. We understand that even before the challenges of inflation and so forth, that more and more teachers out there were choosing not to teach because they could find another job where they could make more money, and they had families, and it almost becomes a necessity to take that other job. And consequently, we have a lot of schools that don't have certified teachers in teaching positions because they don't have, not that we don't have enough certified teachers in the state, we do. We just, our school districts in some ways cannot compete with other sectors of the economy who are taking teachers away and paying them more. Even in Laredo, we have two school districts, United Independent School District, Laredo Independent School District, and there, just in Laredo, you have the school districts kind of competing with each other for teachers, where they'll hire teachers away from each other by paying them more. So there's always hope. I mean, we're going to have, it appears, we're likely to have a special session in September. We'll probably have some others between now and then, but in September, I believe is what the governor has telegraphed, would be a special session to talk about education. And yesterday, the Speaker of the House named a select committee to focus on educational issues, presumably to sort of get ready on things that they can bring up during that September special session. So my guess is that, that may be one of the items that we bring up in September, again, as we did during the regular session. Whether or not we can get enough support, I can tell you that every Democrat, and I think I'm right when I say this, that every Democrat in the House and Senate will support a teacher pay raise, but we don't have the majority. So you've got to have Republicans as well, and that's kind of where we're at on that issue.
Any comments, Representative King, Chuck King?
I do, and Representative Raymond can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe in the House of Representatives we did pass a pay raise, and a fairly significant pay raise fairly significant pay raise. And then in the Senate, there's a strong push for school vouchers in the Senate. And so they connected they took the pay raise bill, put the voucher amendment on it, and then basically we're trying to make you have to vote for vouchers in order to vote for the pay raise, and that's going to be the fight. But we did pass a pay raise in the House of Representatives, and it wasn't able to make it through the whole process there. But I think that I think we will have a special session in September probably, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get a pay raise out of this session before it's over with for the school teachers. I know they certainly need it. My father was a school teacher. He's a retired school teacher now. And so we were able to help the retired school teachers. So.
Yeah. Lulu?
Well, yes, and Representative King is correct, and so is both Representative Raymond. In terms of the Democrats supporting the teacher pay raise, we certainly did do that, and Representative King is correct. Our version would have had a raise for teachers. However, as he said, it's tied to vouchers now, and so they're holding I hate to say that, holding the teachers hostage in the sense that trying to make sure that we can pass a voucher bill, but we're steadfastly against that. The House in the appropriations bill passed a rider that said we would not fund, no state money would be allowed to be expended on vouchers. So we took a position early on in the session when we passed our version of the appropriations bill. In the end, as he said, when it came back, they had, we pretty much didn't have anything in there for teachers other than the retired teachers. They do get a raise in their COLA. Finally, they do get, and then they also get a 13th paycheck. I myself voted against the appropriations bill because the AFT was opposed to the fact that it had no teacher pay raises. So I went ahead and registered my protest vote to make my position clear that, I did not appreciate the fact that teachers were not justly compensated. So, when we do come back in special session late August or September, I'm hoping that we can decouple that issue and at least and not pass vouchers, but yes, go for getting some teachers the relief that they need. So that's all I have to say as a freshman.
Thank you, Lulu. Robert, are there any other questions? If not, we can proceed with Representative Raymond's presentation.
No, not
Sure,
that I see. Go right ahead. Not that I see.
Okay.
There's no question.
Well,
Thank you.
if something pops up, then just let us know and we can try to address that. But there's so many things that come up, so I'll talk about a couple of them, and again, we can veer off into other issues. But for me, being on the State Affairs Committee, certainly one of our biggest issues was the power grid. A lot of people remember Winter Storm Uri, or they remember we had a freeze 2 years ago. They don't even know the name of it, but it was called Winter Storm Uri. And my feeling, and I said it all session on committee, was that I felt like every day in Texas is a Winter Storm Uri, because the official numbers from the Water Development Board and the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is that we're adding about 1,200 people to the state of Texas every day. And I doubt that it's that low, but even if it is just 1,200 people, that's a lot. And that doesn't even get into the number of new businesses and industry and so forth. So the demands on our grid are going to continue to go up and up and up. And that's good in some ways because it shows that our economy is growing. But with that is the demand for electricity. So in the end, we finally passed some legislation that will build a new generation, new plants, gas plants in the state of Texas. Solar and wind continue to grow. You have more and more of energy coming from solar and wind, renewable energy. But we've got to have plants, electric utility plants built, because we have a lot of plants in the state of Texas that are 30 or 40 years old and that will be going offline, that won't be able to work or just cost too much. And same time, if we don't have new ones being built, obviously you're headed for a train wreck. So we've done some things, including over the next 4 years, we'll be using something I advocated from the beginning, was that we use some of the surplus that we had to build some of those plants. And so it'll be about $10 billion. And the way we're doing it is, instead of doing what initially had been thought of, the Lieutenant Governor threw out there in legislation on the Senate side, which would be that the state would build the plants and use them only in an emergency. Incredibly, these new plants, these new power plants, can go online within 5 minutes. They can be off and you turn them on and they're part of the grid within 5 minutes. We're not going to do that. We're going to do a loan program so that the private sector can come in, borrow from that, and of course pay it back. And if they do it more quickly, then they'll pay less back, right, or less interest. So that, I think, it was very important. I'm glad we did it. I think it's going to help. And another thing that I was very involved in with, and continue to be as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, are property tax cuts. I have long believed, as a lot of Democrats used to believe, that we needed to have property tax cuts, that we needed to invest more state money in our local schools. Because what happened when I first got here and Chairman King first got here, the state was local school districts were being funded above 50% by the state, and then that got flipped, where it got below 50% into the mid 40s, and I think it even creeped into the low 40s. Then the rest of that had to be made up by local property taxes, and that's when property taxes really started to go up and up and up. So I have long advocated that we needed to have property tax relief, because what that would mean is two things. One, that the state would be putting in a bigger percentage of what it costs to run our schools and show our commitment to fund those schools, right? And second thing is that I've said for a long time, and I say this in Democratic caucus meetings, if you're in River Oaks in Houston or Highland Park in Dallas, which are the nicest parts of those cities, you want property tax relief. But if you don't have property tax cuts, those folks are going to be fine. They'll be fine. But if you're from Chacoan or you're from, West Laredo, the lower income a neighborhood gets, the harder it is for those folks to hold on to those homes, the harder it is for those folks to make ends meet when their property taxes keep going up and up and up. So the property tax relief, I believe, and I think, I don't know how anybody could dispute this, is it helps areas. The poorer the area, the more that property tax relief helps. And again, it shows a bigger commitment by the state to funding a larger part of our local schools, what it costs to run our local schools. So we put overall altogether $17.6 billion are in the budget. It's in the budget to help lower property taxes. It's the largest we've ever had. We are still, of course, in debating back and forth on what that looks like, where that tax break would come from, whether it's compressing our tax rate, the schools compressing their tax rate and the state paying for that, whether it's increasing the homestead exemption. 2 years ago, we increased it for the first time in a long time from 15,000 to 40,000. And again, voters had to approve that. So right now there's a $40,000 homestead exemption on property taxes and for residential homeowners. And the proposal that we passed in the House when we substituted language of the Senate bill, we included $100,000 homestead exemption. Of course, we also included appraisal caps so that we would cap all appraisals, all property in the state, homes, businesses, etc., at 5%, so that they could not go up more than 5% in value each year, in appraised value each year. The Senate appears not to be interested in passing that. And so we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do there. But in the end, I think we'll do it. I think we will be providing significant property tax relief and the highest percentage that the state has paid of our local school, what it takes to run our local school districts in a long, long time. My hope would be that we could lock in and say the percentage can never be lower than what it is this year, than what we passed this time. That's what I would like, so that it could never be a lower percentage. And I understand that in future legislatures, you could say, well, 51 or 52% of what? So that if future legislatures say, fine, we'll commit to 51, 52%, but 51 or 52% of what? So if they cut if they cut spending on public education, the state does, the legislature does in the future, I think they'll pay a very strong political price for that. So I believe we're headed in the right direction in terms of the state showing its commitment to funding local schools, and by extension, then of course, providing significant property tax relief. So that was something else I worked on. I continue to work on it. I'm one of the joint authors on the House bill. I was on the conference committee, 5 reps, 5 senators. We're still trying to figure out what we can agree on. But those are 2 big issues that are affecting Texans and will affect the future. So,
Thank you.
you know, let me I guess yield to Representative Flores at this point. Maybe she wants to talk about something, and then we can keep going.
I'll just chime in on what you just said, and you know what the House did, and we actually got called back into special session, as Representative Raymond was describing, that at first during the regular session the House had more generous. We had actually capped we had an appraisal cap, as well as the compression of the tax rate, or the lowering of the tax rate. And then also, well, what I would have hoped for is that there would have been an increase. The way to do it is to increase the basic allotment in terms of funding our schools. We barely raised it at all. And so what we needed to do, and it's a more steady way to increase our funding and the state commitment to public schools, is to raise the basic allotment. But what the House ended up doing in special session, and we of course passed the bill and signed died, we adjourned. And so what we did was pass just the compression bill, the lowering of the tax rate, but it does amount to $17 billion property tax relief. The state does have to put that money back into the school system, because if you lower the tax rates for property taxpayers, you know, for local school districts, you know, obviously the money's going to drop. So the state has to input what that amount that drops, and that's the 17 billion that we're going to have to put in. And that's where we left it. The Senate, of course, wants to increase the homestead exemption. However, what the House bill does is it impacts all property owners. It doesn't just do homesteads. It also does small businesses, all businesses, but it helps the mom and pop businesses as well, because their property taxes are going up. What the bills don't do, of course, is, you know, renters are sort of left out there as they always have been, at the mercy of what the property owners, you know, charge for rent, right? They don't, if they get a property tax relief, they're not necessarily required to lower, you know, what they charge in rent. So it's so the renters don't have something, any relief. But they aren't paying property taxes on other than a pass through on their rent. So anyway, I'm hoping that, you know, again, that for funding the schools, I hope that in the future, and I hope this new special committee that Representative King mentioned will, you know, also address the issue of the basic allotment, because when you raise that, I believe, and you know, as again, I'm new, but it ties to teacher pay raises. There's a percentage that the more you raise the allotment, that the teacher salaries do increase. And so that is a more sound way. And I believe every Texan, you know, supports that approach of raising the basic allotment. And that's the per pupil, you know, amount that the schools put in, and also to change it to base it on on enrollment and not attendance. That way schools aren't penalized. So hopefully those issues will be addressed by the special committee, and they'll have, input into whatever the school funding discussion becomes in the special session, whenever that is called. The only other thing on the school safety, I was able to put an amendment on that bill that helped the schools not be jeopardized, because they do get funding, because they were putting making it pretty onerous on the school districts on, having to hire somebody to that is trained and to carry a gun, be an armed person on each campus. But they had a very stringent timetable, and the amendment that they accepted was that they wouldn't be penalized if they got grants and federal grants or other grants that if they couldn't quite meet the timetable that the House bill required, that they wouldn't, their federal grants or other grants wouldn't be jeopardized for the school district. So that was a plus. Then I was, happy that I was able to put that on that.
Well, congratulations, Representative. I do believe we have a question.
Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Oh, no, Robert, is there a question? Someone's got
Yes,
their hand up.
there
I
is.
raised my hand.
I see a question here though. It was asked anonymously, but I'll read the question. I already. It says anonymous attendee, but essentially it says, I'm looking for a representative that would support education and reform in the prison systems. Incarcerated persons are primarily uneducated and in need of training and education to enter back into the community. I guess maybe there's a representative maybe who would be interested in taking this opportunity to maybe add to this. Maybe they've done something about this incarcerated individuals' education in the incarceration
Representative King
system.
raised his hand.
Yeah, I did. I did with the function through the deal a minute ago also. But anyway, I need to head to my next meeting. And
Okay.
I was thinking this one started earlier, as we talked about earlier at 5:30. So anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you. And I got to tell you that I'm so grateful to have colleagues like Richard Raymond and Lulu Flores, who's doing just a great job representing Laredo and South Texas. So thank all of you for being here today, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Sure.
Thank you.
Moving along, another topic that's a great interest to this group, but has also been on the call for the special session is the border enforcement. Can either of you address where we are on that issue, and where do you think we're going?
I can. Well, I'll try. I don't want to leave the prior question before we get to border security.
Oh, okay.
So let me just say, candidly, it's not an issue that the issue of educating folks who are incarcerated hasn't been very high profile that I know of, because I don't even remember hearing anything recently on that. I have in the past, of course, supported funding for programs where inmates can get an education. I remember working with, some parents from Laredo who had a relative, actually a couple of times, and they were their sons who were incarcerated, but who were interested in trying to get an education, and they did, and were able to get a college degree while they were in prison, and came out, and it was a tremendous help for them coming back, into the private sector, that they had that. So I would agree with you. I mean, I think that, look at our society, and those of us who were fortunate enough to get an education, and as people get that opportunity, they just tend to do better in society, because it just helps you. I mean, learning to read, to write, to be able to reason, to be able to figure things out, to be able to find out what your strengths are, to be able to help you figure out things that you are interested in, that you're just good at, and something that you really like. That's what education is all about. And then you end up being not only a happier person, but a more productive part of our communities. And so I absolutely believe that we should continue to offer inmates the ability to get an education. I don't know, and I don't want to make up right now statistics or numbers and say, well, we have a waiting list of thousands of inmates who have requested to try to get some education or further their education, and we just haven't put enough money into it. I don't know what that is. I don't know how long that wait list is, if there is a wait list. I know that we do invest in it. I just don't know how much within the budget this session. So I don't want to pretend that I do, but I can tell you that I agree with you that it makes a difference when that person comes out. With reference to border security, I mean, I think all you got to do is read the newspaper every day and to know that that Governor Abbott and apparently governors from all over, Republican governors from all over the country, have decided to continue to send law enforcement officials to help us with the border, with illegal, to try to stem illegal immigration. It's a hard issue. I mean, in some ways, it's not that hard. I've said for many, many years what I believe, and I've told many members of Congress what I believe is that we need to do is to expand the visa worker program. We know that if people can come over here legally to work legally, that they will do that. They'd rather, I've always said, people would rather walk across a bridge than swim across a river. I don't think that the Congress is likely to change the provisions in the law that deal with citizenship. I think they are what they are. It's a long line. You have to wait a long time to get your citizenship. But if we could expand the worker programs, I think that you would have a much better situation. You would have less human smuggling. You would have less abuse of particularly women and children who are on the immigration trail to come into this country. But we're not there yet. The Congress hasn't passed anything, and we really can't do it at the state level. I wanted us to try doing it at the state level, to be honest with you, but I figured it just wasn't going to get very far because that clearly is an issue for the federal government. But I think you're going to continue to see the governor and the legislature put a lot of money into trying to do whatever the state can do to stem the tide of illegal immigration, because it is a lot of people that are coming. If you read the news, you saw the governor announce the other day these big inflatable balloon type deals. I don't even know what you call them, but like to put them in the middle of the river, and thinking that maybe that will somehow slow down illegal immigration. But there is concern about how state, whether it's the National Guard, State Guard, or the Department of Public Safety in particular, how they are going to deal with immigrants who come here and who they confront, how they're going to deal with that. I'm still not sure how all that's going to work, but the governor is going to keep pushing hard to try to do something. It is a very red meat political issue, and the governors from other states, as you all have seen, are sending more and more of their state law enforcement to help patrol the border, if you will. So until we can get to a point where people know that they can't just jump into our country, they're going to keep doing it because they're looking for a better way of life. What I will say is this: I mean, I believe a lot of us, many of us, certainly on the Democratic side, have a big heart, understand the human condition, understand that in El Salvador and Guatemala and other places that life is terrible, and your heart goes out to these people. And you even hear it from law enforcement people who think they're real conservative, and they start dealing with some of these immigrants, and all of a sudden, it's real to them, and they're not as hard about the issue they were before. But I have said, if for those that support open borders, because believe me, there are people who support open borders. There are that say anybody who crosses ought to be able to come over here. I don't support open borders. I don't think it's a good idea. I think we have to have laws, and we have to follow those laws. But if it's going to be let anybody come because they're coming from a situation that is worse than being here in the United States, I can tell you, if that's going to be the test, then we need to start allowing people from Iran, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from several African nations to come over here ahead of the line, because there are people in those parts of the world whose lives are much worse than the people in El Salvador or Honduras or Mexico, for that matter. So if that's going to be the measure, what I say to some of my colleagues is, if that's going to be the measure, then let's let the people from the Middle East and from Africa come, because they're in worse condition. Obviously, I don't think that's the answer. I don't think that's the way to go. I think we have to have a real policy in place. And I think that the big driver for people coming over here is to get work. And they come over here because United States citizens give them jobs. And I say this to Republicans all the time. United States citizens give them jobs. That's where they come. They're leaving a bad situation, but they're coming to a better one because US citizens and US companies are hiring them. So if we know that's going to happen and we know we need that workforce, why don't we make it legal for them to be here? Not give them citizenship, not give them the right to vote, but give them the right to be people that don't have to live in the shadows. That if they work for a company and that company doesn't pay them, that they have recourse where they can go to the workforce commission and say, hey, they didn't pay me. I'm here at this Shell station and they didn't pay me for the work in the last 3 weeks. That they have a recourse because they have a legal work permit to be in this country. To me, that's the answer. But it seems as though right now, I don't know that anybody wants to solve the problem. And so you leave it to where the governor, a conservative Republican governor, is going to do what Governor Abbott does, and what other governors are trying to do by sending their law enforcement to the border over here. And I can tell you, this isn't just Republican deal. I'm from the border. I've been all my life. And I promise you, there is a lot of resentment by people who live on the border toward folks who come over here illegally, even though they know many of these same people that get mad are the ones that are hiring them and giving them a reason to come over here. But anyway, it's a hard issue. But until we as Democrats and Republicans decide, let's be real about what's going on, let's pass the laws that let people work here legally, you're just going to keep having this, and you're going to have the reaction from the very conservative Republicans to try to beat their chest and put more law enforcement officers on the border.
Lulu?
Well, I'll just say that the whole issue of immigration is overall a federal issue, and it needs to be, definitely need to have immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform, and we need Congress to deal with this issue. In the meantime, there are issues, as the representative has pointed out, that occur along the border and the state that have pushed, I guess, the governor and others to try to address these issues. However, I do feel that it's the jurisdiction of the federal government, and I think we need to pressure our federal government to continue to do that. So a lot of the types of bills that the governor was pushing, in my opinion, would have pushed the constitutional boundaries. And several of the bills that Representative Guillen from Starr County was pushing didn't go through in the regular session, and so some of them were pretty scary, creating vigilante groups, to be doing the enforcement. And there was real concern that you would have untrained, personnel, or not even personnel, untrained volunteers who would be taking on these duties. And it wasn't even specific to the border. It could have been done in any of the counties or any of the borders of Texas. It wasn't necessarily the southern border to Mexico. And it was unclear as to whether or not it would not also be in all the counties in Texas where these folks could be rounding up people who appear to be immigrants, and including you and me, and doing that and being armed. So fortunately, those bills were stalled and did not go through. What we ended up doing and there were several bills that the governor signed that were special session. One was by Representative King, which was created a fund that would reimburse agricultural landowners for any damages that are done by folks who enter their like ranches or properties and create damage like fences and things like that. So it does create a fund that people can get money from the state to be able to do, repair their properties or pay for the damages. And so that was one thing. And I guess I don't know a lot about the stash houses, but we were able to amend it that ameliorate it, because there was some provisions in there that if they stopped you and the illegal trafficking, and the way the definition was that it could have been family members who, because you have mixed status families who travel together, and there was the concern that, you know, relatives could be then arrested, and I think it was going to be a felony. So that bill got amended at the very end, and that was when it passed in special session, was to make sure that it did not include family members. And I don't have all the specifics about the bill, but I do know that Representative Chairman of Malcolm Neave was able to amend the bill that was acceptable to Representative Guillen to ameliorate that and to at least fix that. So yes, but I agree, you know, people come here in search of jobs, in search of asylum. We don't need to be criminalizing these people. And we do have to have, you know, some, you know, comprehensive immigration reform on the national level. And we also need to make sure that we can make sure that there is a pathway to citizenship included in that federal legislation. And I'll stop there. I was gonna mention something earlier, about the prison training. And I was just gonna say that in addition to, and I don't know if it was legislation now or was just proposals out there that I've been, you know, on the campaign trail, but about the fact that, you know, when you release folks who are getting out of prison, that they basically start their, you know, release training, you know, 1 to 3 months prior to being released. And that's not enough of, you know, re-entry education and training to be able to make it out there in the world. So, you know, folks have been talking about extending that they should really be ongoing while you have folks who are incarcerated, so that when they are, and when they do approach the date of release, and when they are released, they have much more counseling and are job training skills, job, search skills and things like that, because you can't just expect somebody who has been shut in for long periods of time or any periods of time to be able to be released and be able to
enter the workforce.
And just enter the workforce and just, so this training needs to happen throughout, you know, their incarceration and at least much more than, you know, 2 or 3 months before they're released. So anyway, those would be some things that I think some members had talked about, and of course maybe didn't go anywhere. I'd have to look because I can't remember. My brain is like overload from everything that went through in the session, but I think that's a good idea. And if it didn't, you know, we need to look at those kinds of programs to extend, you know, vocational training and counseling for when folks are ready to be released.
Well, we've got a few minutes left.
So
I want to state that.
Let me jump in. I want to.
Oh, go ahead.
Gloria, can I say something?
Yes,
so
sir.
I want to jump in on something that I didn't say on the border security. So here's the reality. The reality is, because of the large number of people who are coming over, the state of Texas has been spending money and will continue to spend money to try to do something, right? A lot of it has been in these last years by deploying the National and State Guard. And I'm a member of the State Guard. So I'm in the middle of it. I see it. I know what's going on. That's what the governor has done. DPS as well. But on the border itself, it's been more National Guard. What a lot of us were pushing was, if you're going to spend this money, then let's move away from the National Guard, which are not trained as law enforcement, really. Move them away, National and State Guard, away from the border. And what I always said was, it's about FTEs, full-time employees, and they should be law enforcement trained, commissioned officers. So the bill that Lulu referenced was actually Matt Schaefer. So Schaefer introduced a bill. Chairman Guillen introduced a separate bill. Chairman Guillen's bill had more to do with programs like compensating landowners whose land was, or fences, etc., were busted up because of chases, right? DPS chasing smugglers and things like that.
Grants for the courts as well, SB 7, grants for the courts, yes, and things like that.
Grants for the courts. And so we had that, and I was a joint author on that bill, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Schaefer bill, which had the very tough provisions about, commissioned and non-commissioned officers. Basically, as Lulu said, you could say vigilante groups. So we were very much against that. And so the speaker asked a few of us, I think it's five or six Democrats, 5 or 6 Republicans, to work on that. I kept hammering it. I'm not the only one that felt this way, but my thought is, one of us focus on this, one of us focus on this, one of us focus on this. I kept hammering, saying you cannot have non-commissioned officers. You cannot have the Proud Boys. You cannot have, the requirements would be, as long as you weren't a felon, you weren't a convicted felon, I guess, you could be part of these officers, the border security force. And so we kept hammering at that. So in the end, the Schaefer bill died. But what we did is we put language into the Guillen bill, and this is the bill that I joint authored. And in that bill, we put in there that you would, essentially either expand the DPS workforce, or what I want is, I want the money to go directly to local police departments and local sheriff's departments, because I think if we do that, it's better than having National and State Guard. It's better than having more DPS, because what ends up happening is sheriffs and PDs who are trained law enforcement officers, they actually end up making more drug interdictions, for example, because they're on the ground, they're right there, they know the community. Would they get involved in illegal immigration? Absolutely, if that's what the bill called for. But I think it would be done better than if you have DPS troopers or National or State Guard on the border. So that was agreed to. Chairman Guillen, the speaker, and others agreed, and we put the language in there that you would have that you could only have commissioned officers. We dropped the language about non-commissioned officers, and that to me was a big deal, because you took away those vigilante groups, right? That passed the House, but then it died in the Senate. So that's where we're at.
Director Tellez, we're at 7 o'clock. Do we have more time, or? Okay.
Sorry. Any other questions? We didn't get into DEI. Let me just throw in there.
I was gonna say that.
DEI, but do we have enough time, Robert? Robert, do we have time?
We do have more time. It's
Okay,
up to
all right,
us to
please.
decide how long we go, but
Yes.
I do stress we should keep it within an hour and a half, just for our viewers can stay with us. They're gonna drop off if we stay longer than that. But there was one question from the Q&A session here. It was again asked anonymously, but it's essentially regarding illegal immigration / border security after crossing the border. Is keeping families, mothers, and children still an issue? Are they being placed in jail or detention centers? What is being done to protect the unaccompanied minors or keep them safe? Question mark. I know this is out of the purview of state representatives, but if you can answer.
That's a federal level, and so I know the Biden administration was very much against separating parents from their children from their parents. But I want to tell you where the other side comes from, because you have to be prepared for this. Those of you who are watching and want to be part of the discussion and part of the movement, and I'm glad you're part of LULAC, because LULAC plays such an important role. But this is where they come back on the other side. They say, when a parent breaks the law in Texas, when they break the law, they go shoot somebody, they go rob a store, they beat up their kid, they get into trouble. Okay, under Texas law, and Lulu knows this, you separate the child from that parent. You don't keep them together, right? That's what the other side comes back at when they say, well, hey, listen, they broke the law. They broke the immigration law. So we separate them from the parents, because that's what we do. When the parent breaks the law in Texas or anywhere in the country, you don't keep the kid with them, right? So I'm throwing that out just so you all know how the other side talks about that issue. It is a federal issue. Again, the Biden administration has, doesn't want to separate the families. However, just recognize that that's where the other side comes from.
However, when you separate them once there's been due process and they have been convicted, and then the parent is removed or sent to prison or whatever, these are folks who, a lot of them are seeking asylum. And like I said, they shouldn't be criminalized. They have the right to seek asylum. Now, whether or not they need to wait to be able to enter the country legally once that asylum, process is is taken care of, well, then you do have to have a determination, and that's why, and separating, parents and from their children and children from their parents at the border is not a very compassionate thing to do. I mean, you need, that's,
I agree.
that's,
I
and
agree.
they're, yes, they are violating, immigration, laws. However, they have not committed any other, violent crimes or anything like that to where, they would have. So if they are seeking asylum, they should, to the extent possible. And I know this is a federal issue and they're grappling with it. On the state side, there was funding in one of the bills, I can't remember which one, and I don't even remember if it passed, but I think it was Guillen's grant that had a lot of grants and things that was going to try to send money to try to give to the court so that they could expedite these processes and be able to process these cases more expeditiously. I'm not sure that went through in the end.
It did, but again, it did, but it died in the Senate. The bill died in the Senate.
Right. So it did not, completely through. So it didn't go through. It didn't pass. It's not law. So anyway.
Before we conclude, I did read that the governor had signed the DEI, the bill dismantling the DEI at college campuses. So would you all briefly remark on that before we get off the call?
Gosh, I'm gonna let Richard.
Can you, or we'll save it for another day, but the governor did sign.
Well,
that
I'll just say this for those that I don't know, in case some people didn't follow it, or if you did, but the Republicans, we have differences of opinions, of course, especially those of us who are minority, but we have the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion offices on college campuses. And so it just became one of the, flavors of the month for the Republicans during the interim. Very conservative Republicans say, oh, we've got to do away with these offices because, they're skewing history and they're discriminating against you if you're not minority, and all that kind of stuff. And so they were just absolutely determined to shut down those offices. And so they did. They passed legislation. I doubt that a single Democrat voted for them. I don't think a single Democrat voted for the legislation. But it passed. And that's just one of the ways that the Republicans are going on anything that has to do with minorities. I think giving minorities some catch up, what I call catch up attention, because it's like we're trying to catch up, for many years of discrimination. But anytime you do anything that smells of trying to help somebody catch up, then it's reverse discrimination now. It's bad. Because it's now it's discriminating against Anglos, I guess, but that's where they are, and that was one of the issues, and it passed, and I guess it got signed today. I didn't see that, but
yes, that's what I
expected that.
Lulu?
Well, they were able to again. We were able to get some amendments on that, try to make it less toxic than it was. As it was, diversity, equity, inclusion just means programming that allows for discussion of diversity and inclusion of programming that celebrates different and every kind of diversity. It's not just exclusive of Anglos. I mean, it deals with veterans, it deals with disability, so it's just like Richard said, they glommed onto DEI the same way they did CRT and totally distorted the meaning. And once it actually became their lexicon, they just kept hammering on that and really trying to, I think, conflate it with affirmative action and old programs that have been held, unacceptable in taking race into account and admissions and stuff. But this was just more, creating welcoming environments for people of diverse backgrounds and abilities. So, you know, they distorted the meaning of that. So in the end, I believe there was some amendments that, you know, they were also targeting faculty, you know, and trying to be punitive and remove tenure to faculty. And so if they even spoke about, you know, diversity. So I think some of those things got taken out, as well as I'm trying to remember the if school, they gave them a longer time period to be, if they had some grants and programming in place, I think they extended the time that they could continue that until they were completed or phased out. So those were some few tweaks that after many, many hours of trying to put on amendments or trying to raise points of order on this, what I consider bad legislation, you know, it prevailed, unfortunately, but we were able to soften some of the blows, however we could. And that's, you know, that was the Democrats really just continuing to fight as the only way we could by, you know, talking things to death.
Thank you. Robert, are there any questions?
None that I see here in the chat. I'm reviewing it here and I don't see anybody's hands up.
And I'm gonna
say,
we need to thank our panelists. Thank you all very much.
thank you so much. Yes.
Lulu Flores for jumping in, and Richard Raymond, please get to your destination. He's driving and was running out of glass. Get to your destination safely.
I've been, you know, I'm here in New Braunfels. I stopped and got gasoline. I parked.
Okay, let me ask you a question real quick.
Thank you for
Did y'all
including
convene today? There's some rumor going on in Austin that y'all convened and then adjourned again. No, right?
No. We are adjourned sine die, the House.
Okay, okay.
Dan
I had
Patrick,
some calls about y'all. I said I better
the
ask.
lieutenant governor is trying to put it back on the House and trying to, in the press, put it on the Speaker and the House of Representatives that we're the ones that need to come back and deal with the issue on the property tax relief. And the fact of the matter is that we're adjourned, and I don't even know if we can come back since we passed a resolution to adjourn. And so, you know, the special session is still on right now, and it will continue until the Senate fails to act, because the 30 days will elapse.
But y'all are adjourned.
And we are adjourned, but the Senate
Somebody
is not.
just called, I swear to God. Thank you very
The
much.
session's still on. It's ongoing. They keep.
Okay, thank you, Robert. It's all yours now. Thank you, guys.
I just want to say one thing. I just want to say thank you.
Go right ahead, State Representative. Go right ahead.
I wasn't an official panelist, but I appreciate your including me. So if I wasn't as prepared as I should have been, I didn't have the expectation.
You were great.
But
you were great. Everyone was great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, so we appreciate
you guys.
Representative Raymond for joining us, and extend again congratulations to State Representative Tracy King, who had to leave us briefly, but I want to thank everybody for joining us, and hopefully this will be the first of many legislative updates. There will be special sessions commencing in the Senate, and as we heard, you know, in the future in September for the House. And so there's a lot of bills that we are tracking, and we're going to try to bring to the forefront for you guys to understand and to know. And once we do have September 1st, we're going to have a more in-depth synopsis of bills between Ms. Leal and myself and other state representatives, both sides of the aisle. We're going to work together, and we're going to see, you know, what happened this legislative session and how is it going to affect us. How's it going to affect us in our daily lives? A lot of people don't realize that September 1st, these bills enact. And that's when we
a lot of bills go to effect on September 1st.
Yeah.
Oh, and I have some good news. I got a bill signed today by the governor.
Oh, well, congratulations.
For a press release, but it deals with housing, providing housing for homeless and low income folks in the district. And so Senator Safarini was my Senate sponsor, and
from Laredo.
And we're both from Laredo, but this bill affects District 51, my district, Southeast Travis County. We have a huge homeless population here, and we're trying to create housing for those who are unhoused. So I'm excited that it didn't die and it didn't get vetoed and it got signed. So yay.
Yay, Lulu,
Wonderful.
congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Well, good
That's
night,
wonderful.
y'all. Okay, I know everybody has to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Y'all
y'all
take care.
safe travels, Richard. Take care. Good seeing everyone. Pictures.